just to sort of level set, I want you guys to do 10 seconds of agency versus in-house. Give us your 10-second pitch, starting with Stephanie.
I thought I did that already.
You did. Reminding you again. So you're.
So in-house, because you have your hands on the data, so you can work with the data every single day and base all your decisions on that data and continuously optimize. I think there's more knowledge by being in-house because you're there every single day. It's the spoken and the unspoken of a business that you pick up just by being there. And so you don't have to explain things to other people or forget to tell them or all of that sort of bureaucracy and broken telephone and things like that happens when you have to explain to someone else.
Okay, great.
Okay, good.
10 seconds. 10 seconds. I'm going to hold you to it.
Many clients would not have jobs without agencies.
Great. Many clients won't have jobs without agencies
I
as
think
well.
I think the answer is depends on the client and depends on the function.
Yeah. Okay, so Stephanie, really, I think you gave us two really interesting examples with the wooden toy house and the other example of just how agile an in-house group can be. And you know, I've heard other talks like Mike from FreshBooks and Hubba also, you know, when they spoke at various MarketingTOs and TechTOs. Sorry, I'm ignoring this side of the room. Also talked about the fact that traditional agencies are not agile. But can they be?
Yeah,
Can they be?
I would completely disagree with the statement that agencies are not agile. We teach clients how to be agile, and that's a big part of our business. The other thing I think agencies bring to bear, really smart companies will say, I want a hybrid. I want to insource key skills, and I want to use agencies for specialized purposes. Because sometimes the skill is not core to the company's core competency. And you don't need to hire an FTE with all those benefits. You're going to get a much stronger performance out of, for example, companies of a certain size might only need a SEO strategist a couple times over the course of the year. And that SEO strategist is going to be a lot stronger because they've worked across multiple clients. On the other hand, like skills like product management, I think that's a really strong one to stay in-house because you are totally closer to the business as well. These days, a lot of clients have said, our QA function, we're completely outsourcing. It's not core to the business. QA people can do it better externally anyways. Last point on this is, and I was tongue-in-cheek when I said that a lot of clients would be out of jobs for agencies, but you know, I think there is a reliance on the institutional knowledge of the agency in order to provide redundancy for the client. So we've had clients for literally 15 years, and when their people go on mat leave, they hire the client person, the agency person to come in to handle things while that person is gone. So in a way, it's really, really cheap resource redundancy as well.
Great.
Yeah, I think for me, you know, what I've witnessed is it really depends on the client. Like I think you look at some of the big multinationals, especially in a market like Canada, where you have, you know, big multinationals set up shop, and they don't necessarily hire a marketing team of 50 people, right? They'll have like Disney, I think, you know, in Canada had, I think it was just their parks, like 3 people, right? Like they can't necessarily insource everything that they want to do, just impossible. Like it just wouldn't happen. But could they own certain pieces of the marketing tech stack that allow them to just be smarter and closer and get to know their client better? Absolutely, right? Can they do certain things, work with, you know, more growth-driven smaller agencies that are highly specialized on certain things that are going to have big impact on their business? Absolutely. But I do feel strongly that, and you've even seen it, I think, in just the hiring habits of the big agencies in Toronto. Is they're hiring just more specialized people, different types of people, hiring data scientists, hiring, you know, people with like, you know, really strong research and analytics backgrounds, you know, working closely with, you know, with other systems integrators, right? You know, on big sapient type consulting projects for digital transformation. So I think I think it's it's the traditional agencies that are going to adapt and be more nimble are the ones that I think are going to continue to be successful. But I think by no means are they this is just going to die and be taken over by a bunch of like small shops.
Last year, I worked with one of the big 4 consulting groups, and we were working on a luxury brand. And the client said, let's hire a growth hacker. Let's see what they can do. Growth hacker comes in, takes the luxury cosmetic brand and says, do you really want to drive this? Client in the room said, yep, I do. Growth hacker said, okay, give us all the assets you have, and we guarantee we will increase your performance metrics by 200%. And they did. But what they did was, instead of using the assets the way the assets were delivered in managing the brand, they took a very, I would call it clickbait approach to driving, and they were successful. And then one day the CMO walks in, has a look at the creative, and the results were astounding. They looked at the creative and said, fire this person. Like, we can't work, that's just not the business that we're in. So when I asked Stephanie, because you're in the business of driving both, right? You've got really strong performance goals, but you also have a brand that's competing with the big rocks. How do you manage that without hiring the best-in-class contrarians that understand how that elevates to the highest level? What's your view?
Well, I must admit that we do hire agencies sometimes, and we usually hire them when we don't necessarily have the contacts and the expertise. And so I can give some examples. So Dan, that we hired an affiliate agency because we needed to go from here to here really quickly, and we just didn't have the expertise or the contacts. So we did that, but now we've been able to bring it back in-house, and that's happened over and over again. So we used to outsource our co-op sales, and we thought they had the contacts, and that actually didn't work out because we realized that we actually have the contacts and we could do a better job of it, so we brought that back in-house. So sometimes we start with an agency, but in most cases we like to bring it back in-house because I guess we acquire that knowledge.
Right. But how do you, okay, so I know you guys are wanting to jump in, but how do you do that and keep the IP of the agency intact, right? Agencies aren't giving away their stuff for free, and we're also not necessarily here to train clients on the 1 to 20 process, or is that not the issue anymore?
It's not the issue anymore.
Sorry.
It's absolutely the case that we train our clients out of work, and that's the only way we stay relevant, frankly, because we can't. Things are moving so fast. Macromedia Dreamweaver 3 10 years ago, and now the Adobe Stack can do the equivalent of 1,000 people in literally 5 minutes. So if we can't innovate, bring those skills to the clients, and then learn new skills, then we'll be out of a job. And I think programmatic media, you have a great perspective on this, is a great example of that, where I think the technology came so fast, it put media companies in a real bind, and they haven't been able to innovate sufficiently in order to attach value to what the strategic nature of what it is that they're doing.
And also, not done right, it can hurt you, to your point, Alex, of like both from a creative perspective and from if you misuse the tech, right, or if you work with the wrong partner, it definitely can have bad implications. So I think, you always have an ownership. Is it fully in-house? Probably no. There will be managed service components, I think, for any company, right? I think, our decision as a growth-based company was really, we sort of got handed a media plan with a very limited budget that began on this date and ended on this date and involved, these creative. And then it was like, okay, well, what room do we have to iterate? And there was none. And it was just in a box. And then, the sort of thing that put us over the edge was there was just one line item on the media plan that said, X amount of money programmatic. I'm like, okay, well, what does that even mean, right? Like, I know what it means, but what does it mean? I think that's, it's different strokes, right? So
I'm going to grab the mic from you and throw it to the audience because I think that's a great point. Like, there's no more boxes, and it is a fluid, agile group. So now I'm going to throw it to you guys. What questions do you have for the panel? And hopefully we have a lot. Questions? Yep, Shane, let's go.
from a category perspective, who should bring it in-house? You talked about finance. Should they be doing it in-house?
I think the banks are probably the most sophisticated at bringing skills in-house, frankly. Like you see a trend recently for them to take a ton of programmatic media in-house. You see a bunch of large-scale in-house agencies start up. And the other one, and there aren't many, but grocery retail, like Loblaw Digital has close to 200 people that they've set up in the matter of 2 or 3 years. We partner with them, and we have sort of an equivalent number. And they believe very strongly that it is e-commerce, click and collect, is a core asset that has to be protected, and that in-house skill is critical. So I would say banks and some large retailer where I'm seeing the trend.
So I think my question is more for Andrew, and based on I think what Stephanie touched earlier on the smaller nuances when you're closer to the problem and the problem you're trying to solve, and around the role of ethics. So agencies generally focus a lot on the relationship with the client, right? So especially if you're the client partner, it's about the dinners, the fancy Raptor seats, and taking the clients out. You know that happens. So it's part of how the business is done. But as compared to, and also on the other side about awards and what you win at the cons and what campaign is considered most creative. But when you're in-house, it's always about the results. And I would not be scared of telling Stephanie, no, that's not the right thing to do, and that's how we should approach a problem. But the agencies want to keep the stakeholders happy, and what the CMO thinks is the right way. Let's just do that. How do you?
Yeah, I think you raise an excellent point. It's one that we struggle with regularly. How do you balance the long-term relationship for the sake of revenue versus being able to tell a client what the right answer is and potentially risk a relationship? In my experience, I have found the truth sets you free. And if you are good at what you do, you will lead with the right answer and worry about the repercussions later. Because ultimately, consultants play a valuable role in-house in that they can come in and say things that you can't say in-house. And we're very often used in that capacity. But the ethics of it is quite interesting because it's true. Agencies have, I think, perceived to be have this motive to do work that is award-winning for the sake of the awards as opposed to the work itself. But I'll give you like a little known secret. Most of the award-winning work does not actually earn any money. So typically agencies invest heavily in order to win awards. They're not necessarily the ones that are profitable. And there are awards out there like the Effies, which actually focus on the effectiveness of the award as opposed to the glitz of the award video that you produce. And those are the ones that we have the most respect for.
Right, but I think that there is there's a continuum. I appreciate the question around, agencies are in the business to keep clients happy, period, no matter what. Growth hackers are in the business of driving performance no matter what. I hired someone really recently, and again, my example is it didn't matter what happened to the brand as long as the results were there, but there is a tension. Okay, let's take another question. Let's go right in the front.
I have two questions actually. One around the agency compensation models. You kind of touched upon this earlier, but the traditional way is hourly or percentage of spend. Is the crux of that agency versus in-house discussion somewhere hidden in the compensation model? What do you guys think about that? And the second, both on the agency and on the growth hacker side, how do you guys manage the exodus of talent into consultants and freelancers? Because either way, whether you're in an agency or whether you're in-house, there is talent is looking at the industry and going, right, well, I can do this on my own and have a better lifestyle. How do you manage that aspect?
35% attrition on the agency side is kind of the ish average, right? 35% if you look at all in. Yeah. Okay.
I just from my perspective on the model, again, it has really been driven from the client side. It hasn't been driven from, I think anyone in between. Is just more transparency. right? Into I think it was Andrew, you brought up the middlemen in between. It's like, just knowing, right, that this is what I'm making, this is what these three people are making, and ultimately this is what you're paying, right? And I think that just breeds trust, right? And that'll just breed more. That'll just be good business. So I think again, from what I've seen, I think there's been a big shift, especially with anything in the digital marketing space, towards more transparent business models. I can't really speak for the attrition piece. I don't know about.
Yeah, I can. On the pricing piece, regrettably, it's quite antiquated in my view. I think the sad reality is that we've allowed ourselves to be priced on the basis of hours and rates, and it really should be value-based pricing model. Sapient has a history of doing things at a fixed time, at a fixed price, and we do it really well, and that's how we deliver value to our client, because there's an assurance that the price is not going to go up. I would also like to move to a point where we can commit to a return on investment, invest with the client, and grow with the client's success. It happens, but to a very small degree. But I do think now with the availability of data, we can do shared SLAs around performance marketing and make that an investment. We're seeing more and more of that. Last point is, I think there's a very antiquated view by client-side procurement these days who are not accustomed to dealing with agency relationships, and they treat it like a software vendor. And so there's a lot of education that they have to undertake. On the attrition part, what we do to keep people is we sell a sense of community. So we sell diversity, inclusion, freedom, right? And being around sort of like-minded people. We've got the largest data science practice in the country. If you want to be in data science, you have to come to Sapient Razorfish. There's like 25 people who think like you do. And so you're not going to get that anywhere. You're not going to get that client side. You're going to be by yourself. So that's what we sell.
Okay, let's go. Yep.
My question's for Stephanie. So, Well.ca is a relatively small, young brand. Do you think that you would have had the same success with an in-house agency if it was a mature brand? The reason I'm asking this is to me, the benefit of agencies is that they're the line outside of the brand. They kind of have one foot in the real world, where an in-house agency, they kind of aren't able to get their minds outside that.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. Well.ca is 10 years old, actually, so we're not that young. But really, our strategy has been all about SEO, paid search, and really sort of low funnel acquisition. And at the same time, it's growing by word of mouth. And I feel like we have still a ton of runway by working that way. But I think there will be a time when we need to sort of branch out of that low funnel and go higher into the funnel, higher up in the funnel. And there could be opportunities for new thinking there, because it's definitely not in our wheelhouse right now.
And I guess, sorry, when I meant mature, I meant, say, like, the Hondas, the McDonald's, like that have been around for decades.
Yeah. And I think the difference, too, is that we just have really small budgets. And so we need our budgets to work harder because we measure everything. So am I going to spend money on acquiring a new customer through paid search for X dollars a new customer? Or am I going to do a programmatic campaign and probably not get the same kind of results? I know what I can get with paid search, and we still have a ton of runway to go.
Yep.
So this is a question for everybody, just for some context. So I previously worked at Loblaw Digital, so I know some of the Sapient family really well. You made a comment around SEO, and that someone might not necessarily need an SEO expert in their office all year long. I actually have a very specific LD example where that didn't happen, and he had someone that was there periodically. I would say personally, as someone who is actually leads, that was a huge miss, where SEO should actually be incorporated into everything we do within the business. So that's just one aside. But then my question for all of you is, where do you think education factors into all of this? So the fact that it sounds like in-house agencies can be a little bit limited is because actually you don't, the education for marketers these days is kind of lacking to begin with, right? Like, you have a very specialized skill set that can't be taught in schools, or at least traditional schools. And then you have tech schools like, you know, Red Academy, Brain Station, whatever it may be, that are at least trying to break into this. Do you think the fact that an in-house agency can't be successful because you simply can't get the right skill sets in the first place?
Great question. Dan,
Yeah, I think it is a great question. I don't necessarily know the answer. I think what's what is obvious is that the range of specialties again it's growing, right? So I don't think it's going to get easier, right? So I think the agencies that choose to invest in the education and continuous training of their employees as part of their overall value proposition and culture will certainly continue to thrive, because there's going to be a need for that, and to pass that on to their clients, right? I think the cost of not doing that probably is greater than the cost of doing it and having someone leave to go do another job. So I think certainly. Again, it's not going to get easier. I think it's going to continue to get more complicated. I think if you look at the one slide I had up there around the mobile growth stack, what's been interesting around learning around that is understanding how, even if you're a specialty in one thing like SEO, just understanding the different dependencies that has across your entire growth stack, right? And how that how you need to be thinking about retention, and at the same time thinking about how it parlays into things you're doing in display, thinking about where that data is then going to be housed, how that data can influence other key marketing decisions, provide other insights to the product team potentially, and have that sort of in a very circular and self-serving environment. So I think I don't know if I'm fully answering the question, but I think you're right in thinking that it's going to be a challenge to continue to have super smart people.
I think that's the shakedown right now, right? Because it's like you've got good agencies, you've got great people, but there's such a turn, and you're absolutely right. If you have one person on the desk on programmatic and that person leaves, like, you're dead. You've got to figure that out. You've got to have a backup plan. And I think that is why, in my experience working with the big tech companies that are bringing in in-house models, have lots of, like, they've got room, they've got growth, it's the small ones that I worry about. And so that would be, how do you protect yourself? What's your insurance plan when your number one SEM person takes a holiday? What do you do?
Yeah, so what we do is we make sure that our employees are cross-trained. So we have certain players on the team that are very analytical, and they can pick up the different, more technical marketing side of things. And so I make sure that they're working with each other and they cover off each other for vacations and things like that. I think that one thing that we do is we hire people who are curious. I mean, a lot of the people who start at well.ca are right out of university, and they use the internets to learn everything that they know. And they dig in, they want to learn, they want to own the channel that they're responsible for. And in the end, they start teaching us about that channel. And that's why we hire them. We see that curiosity and drive, and it's all about the people. And just one more point about it, I think it's up to the employee and the employer to make sure that their employees are learning and continually challenge. It's not just up to the company. So
I want to point, I'm going to put you on the spot, Vitaly, because I think you have an interesting view in this, in that you run a company that's sort of leading edge in a certain area, working with agencies and clients, okay? So how do you, when it's new, when it's net new, so remember in the days of programmatic, we started to look at header bidding. Not everybody in the programmatic space understood what that was. In fact, there were very few agencies that did it well, and then everyone had to catch up. And that took, 6 months, 9 months of, and if you were a client and you weren't with an agency that was doing the good stuff, you were behind. How do you, because you're doing leading edge, cutting edge, you're using cutting edge technology, cutting edge, how do you counsel clients and partners on how to keep up? It's a big question.
I'll give the same response maybe as Dana, that it depends. I think for companies that have figured out internally how to have more capacities than just, for example, we just focus on distribution. But if a client, for example, have figured out how to build great experiences on the web, they create amazing content, they understand SEO, they know how to handle data, then it's easy to plug yourself in and just be working with an in-house team. But most of the times, it's pretty, it's not ideal. So it's a lot easier oftentimes to work with an agency that has deep understanding and deep roots in just a lot broader scope of topics that usually in-house team is not exposed to. So it kind of depends.
Yeah, okay. Last killer question. Who's got it? Great.
Could you give us your take on the evolution of the marketing function? We've got, I mean, it's a big question, but the level of, from my perception outside of the finance firm that I'm concerned, the level of sophistication required by the fragmentation across some disciplines, and then the balance between professionalization and to be agile and constantly learn. I'm confused as the CMO
Great.
how to manage all of this, where that's going. Pick any aspect of that.
Yeah, I think the question was, could you speak to really the future of marketing in the context of an increasingly technically complex environment, the emergence of so much data you don't know what to do with, and how does a CMO essentially wrestle with that? Do I have the gist of it?
Drives financial value.
So I think the CMO is becoming increasingly a CIO and is scared because of that, because they're not fully equipped to deal with understanding the data. I also believe that traditional forms of marketing are no longer effective, that utility will be the form of driving brand and awareness, as opposed to a traditional promotional-based offer sell. I think today's consumer is so savvy and so upset with advertising today that the only thing that they will accept is not more noise, but anticipatory messages that say, I understand you in a non-intrusive way, and I'm here to make your life better. So, great, very, very simple example is Indochino, who does custom menswear online. You go through the experience, and then just at the right time, when you're checking your account, they say, hey, make $50 and refer a friend. They put the ad right where I wanted to see it. They made it super easy for me. They gave me a benefit. They didn't push anything at me. But it's those messages that I think that sophisticated marketers are saying, I got to be in the always-on game. And that means, practically speaking, I need a very strong data stack, content management messaging. I got to invest in hardware. I have to be customer journey focused. I have to manage moments of truth along the customer journey and be able to optimize them. I need a shit ton of content to make sure I capture all of the different scenarios where customers are going to be. And that's really no longer a traditional CMO job in my view.
Yeah, and the reality, too, just to make it even more complicated, right? If 74% of brands don't matter, right, that's the stat, they don't matter anymore, right? Then what we're going to see, if we've seen so much disruption up to this point, we're going to see 10 times more. Okay, I'm going to leave it to the panel, closing thoughts, because one of the most important things at MarketingTO is to leave enough time for the community to bond, to get together and talk. We want to make sure that you guys have lots of opportunity to do that. So parting thoughts, final thoughts, last messages.
Yeah, I'd say Wyro is hiring also. Is that all right? Yeah. So we're hiring a vice president of marketing, and we're still trying to define that role. But there's certainly going to be ones that understand the entire stack, right? From acquisition through retention and loyalty, and then across every single channel, and right down to the core foundation of how the product is used. So we're hiring a vice president of marketing. We're hiring some program managers as well as some sales folks. So if you're interested, you can find me on LinkedIn as well, or I'll be hanging out if they're serving beer again after.
I don't know. Sometimes I secretly wish I worked at a client side. It's just, it looks like it's a lot of fun, honestly. Yeah.
It is fun. We're hiring too. I think my parting words would be, I mean, you asked a really good question about the future of marketing, and I think no one really knows, and I think the way we will get there is through just being on top of what's happening in marketing and in technology and continually optimizing every day. It's not about, if you look at all the big things you can do, it becomes overwhelming, and so it's little steps every day towards something better.
And I don't know what the future of marketing is either, but I do believe that it's about value creation. And I think these conversations and all of them we're having today add to that. Keep learning, keep growing. Thank you very much for coming to MarketingTO. Awesome.